5 of this will become unicorns in the next 5 years, and we all look forward to that. Private startups like the New Space India Limited, Agnikul Cosmos, which became the first company to successfully test a fully 3D printed rocket engine to carry payloads up to 100 kgs into low Earth orbit, and Messrs. Skyroot Aerospace, a private company in Hyderabad building small satellite launch vehicles, exemplify the capabilities of Indian industry, amongst many others. ISRO is also transferring launch technology to the private sector, enabling future launch vehicles, satellite launches via PSLV and the SSLV. Increasingly, India is turning to private investment to establish itself as a global leader in space technology. Around 140 satellites are expected to be launched under the public-private partnership model, and the government has recently announced an $11 billion research, development, and innovation scheme to boost private sector advances in deep tech sectors through concession financing. It will finance projects that have so-called technology readiness level of 4 or above, which means the project is getting closer to going to market. Since opening up to the private sector, India's space economy has steadily grown to about $8 billion. And with an ambitious pace of growth, we may reach $44 billion, as Dr. Anupam Sharma pointed out, in the next decade. And a large percentage of this will be achieved by India's space startups, which are already involved in satellite manufacturing, space launch services, and space-based data analytics. It will be evident that India is accelerating its space ambitions as part of a broader plan to become a developed country by 2047. At the same time, it is important and sobering to remember that space agendas are inherently ambitious. After all, we are in more ways than one reaching for the stars. And hence our space programs, which are often driven by necessity, tech research and advancement, underpinned by national aspiration and commercial interests, can face challenges at times, and we have to be prepared for that. Hence, we must take into account the possibility of project delays, mission failures, unforeseen engineering challenges, budgetary limitations, and disproportionate denial regimes at times. Cater for those and keep moving forward. It is important that our space plans are done with realistic expectations, careful evaluation, and endeavor to de-risk our projects as best feasible. Notwithstanding the sobering point, the overall possibilities for the defense and space industry in India will remain immense and well worth the risks I pointed out. The global space industry itself is expected to generate $1.1 trillion or more in the next 15 years, which is more than triple its current value of $400 billion. And we in India should be aiming to attain at least 10% of this share through global commercial space market from less than 2% at present. In the next 10 years, we will have a Bharatiya Antariksh space station, and the following 10 years, we may see Indian humans landing on the moon. All this, along with 50 satellites underway as part of the SPS program, indicates, ladies and gentlemen, that we have a busy, interesting, and challenging time ahead. And events such as the DefSpace Symposium enable all stakeholders to come together for ideating and collaborating to realize our common space and development vision. I take this opportunity to thank and wish the ISPA and all participants the very best in their collective endeavors in reaching for the stars. Thank you. Jai.
Thank you, sir, for that very significant address. May I now request Lieutenant General Vikas Rohela to kindly deliver his keynote speech.
Lieutenant A.K. Bhatt, former Air Chief, distinguished guests on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege for me to speak to you all on enhancing engineers' space industry synergy. I will keep the introduction short and concentrate on my requirements ahead. My examples are about capacity, learning from the world and our requirements. And I will begin by giving you an example. I will talk about a runway in which me and Air Marshal Bully Krishna, who is also present here, we were required to make. We visited this place in the western sector and made some guesswork about the alignment and design of the airfield. This guesstimate led us to believe that only the earthwork, that means the removal of the earth using plants, was going to cost about 240 crore rupees. And then we had a eureka moment. Why not use imagery and GIS fusion inputs to recalculate our earthwork requirement? This made us revise the earthwork requirement, and the final calculations came to about 80 crore rupees. With that as an example, I will now begin my formal speech. For a geographically diverse country like India with mountains, deserts, coasts, and dense urban areas, space-based data is a force multiplier for engineering planning, sensing, and decision support. Military reliance on space during modern conflicts is documented by international defense analysts, where space-enabled ISR, navigation and communication have been integral for force coordination, precision strike, and situational awareness. Engineers have and will continue to leverage space-based technologies in both combat and non-combat operations. Geospatial analysis. Firstly, I'll talk about geospatial analysis, PNT and ISR. The Russia-Ukraine war has been amongst the most documented conflicts for commercial satellite.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today I will give you 3 reasons to switch to fermented yeast protein. Number 1, it's got a PDCAS score of 1 on 1, which is as effective and as efficacious as whey protein, but none of the baggage. No skin issues, no bloating, no digestion drama. It's the same results, just easier. Number 2, it's gut loving by design. There is no dairy, there's no heaviness. It's packed with pro and prebiotics, which means it is the lightest protein that your gut will ever meet. Number 3, it's not got that grainy texture. Unlike plant protein, fermented yeast protein is smooth, it's balanced, and it's flavor forward. You can actually taste the difference. Comparatively, it's absolutely yummy. Super U Pro. It's the love my muscles deserve.
Driven terrain models to support mobility planning in desert environments. The US Buckeye system collected over 85,000 square kilometers of geospatial imagery in Iran and over 2 lakh kilometers of imagery in Afghanistan for rapid terrain characterization. For engineers, thus, and we use it similarly, GIS enables terrain character definition. And can be used for creation of operational tracks, siting of helipads, airfields, and geotagging of infrastructure features. High-resolution DEMS generated from satellites and airborne sensors reduced field recce needs and enhance terrain analysis, a widely documented benefit in geospatial intelligence practices. I will now talk about survivability, water, and vulnerability mapping. Satellite-derived hydrological analysis and soil moisture indices are widely used for water resource assessments and drought/flood risk planning. These data improve situational awareness for base siting, supply routes, and sustainment planning. Precise accuracy percentages vary by sensor type and region and should be attributed to specific hydrological models. For example, satellite data has reliably tracked groundwater storage changes worldwide, demonstrating space data's value in resource assessment. Counter mobility and terrain shaping. Remote sensing and synthetic aperture radar imagery are used globally to analyze terrain roughness, drainage, and soil types. Engineering studies suggest digital planning reduces effort by 25% while achieving the same tactical effort in counter mobility and terrain shaping. Recce and contamination surveys. I will now talk about contamination surveys and decontamination efforts that follow such surveys. Post Chernobyl, exclusion zones over 2,600 square kilometers were extensively mapped using aerial and satellite sensors to delineate contamination extents, avoiding human exposure. Spaceborne multispectral data remain invaluable for vegetation stress and ground change detection, supporting safe recce in hazardous zones. Camouflage and deception support. Multispectral and thermal satellite data are used in military analysis to detect signatures that are not visible to the naked eye. Space data have demonstrably influenced camouflage and deception planning in conflicts where adversaries possess persistent ISR capacities. Disaster relief and humanitarian assistance. Satellite flood models and EO data have extended warning times in major river systems, providing emergency services with critical lead times. Satellite mapping has been correlated with high levels of agreement, almost 80% plus, with ground surveys and damage assessment and infrastructure mapping operations, facilitating faster restoration efforts. Geological analysis and digital twins. Remote sensing supports geological fault mapping, soil classification, coastal change detection, and underground planning. Digital twin application in infrastructure maintenance show life cycle cost reduction and operational improvement in civil engineering contexts. Satellite-based infrastructure health monitoring. INSAR techniques can monitor sub-centimeter ground movement 2 to 5 millimeter an year. These are widely used for structural health monitoring for bridges, dams, and tunnels, providing early warning of deformation or subsidence. This capacity is well documented in civil engineering literature. I've already spoken about earthwork and drainage planning. Satellite elevation data (DEMS) support earthwork volume estimation with improved precision compared to traditional methods. Plus minus 10% accuracy is broadly achievable in certain contexts. Specific accuracy varies with sensor resolution and terrain complexity. Satellite imagery and infrastructure planning. Satellite-enabled asset inventories and remote assessment reports lead to better prioritization and life cycle budgeting in infrastructure programs. I will now talk about critical payloads and ground infrastructure that is required to support engineers. These priority payloads which are required for engineers normally require high resolution optical and electro-optical imagery sensors, synthetic aperture radars, PNT augmentation, hyperspectral sensors for material and water detection. These payloads complement ground infrastructure, including secure satellite ground stations, GIS and AI processing centers, edge computing nodes, and encrypted data dissemination networks, enabling timely engineer support. Finally, the critical enablers for engineer space coordination will include a doctrine integrating space data into engineering planning, permanent engineer space license cells, officers training in GeoInt and GIS, standardized interagency data format, public-private partnership for rapid capacity scaling. These institutional and technical enablers are standard best practices in modern militaries leveraging space and geospatial data. To conclude, space systems are now integral to national infrastructure, economy, and defense operations. For us as engineers, integrating space-driven data into planning, execution, and resilience strengthens operational readiness, reduces risk, and accelerates decision-making, making space engineering synergy a strategic imperative for future conflicts and national tasks. To carry this discussion forward, I will now request ISPA to organize a focus group discussion between the industry partners and us so that we can both share our learnings and requirements. Thank you, Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. May I now have the honor to request Lieutenant R.S. Raman to kindly deliver his special address.
Thank you, General Bhatt, Director General ISPA, for making me part of this very eminent panel and allowing me to share thoughts. I think while the need for improving our operational capacity in space is settled, and as to what we want to do and what is the diagnosis or the voids that we have. I think that's been covered by my previous speakers. So allow me to just focus on what I thought is more relevant from a user point of view, is how to do this. To bring context to what I'm going to speak, I'll just give a line or two on what happened during Sindhu, because I happen to be in the current appointment during that. While I can't disclose things you would agree with me, which have a security implication, all I would like to say is, while all the agencies, the space, DG Space, and everybody rose up to the occasion and provided the inputs that we required, but we all agree that there is a lot of scope for improvement, especially if we want to consider the revisit rates and also the resolution at which we wanted the image, and particularly during day and night, and how readily they were available. Because considering the kind of adversaries we have, the battle is quite fluid, so the revisit rates are important. They did their best, and all agencies even extended into the commercial demand and tried to meet our request. But even the commercial vendors were overwhelmed because of the sudden surge which happened. So it only means that we need to expand our basket from where we're going to get these. I'm talking only about the imageries. The others also showed similar kind of assessment that there is scope for improvement. I leave it at that. Now, before we go on to how we have to do, let's see what the Chinese have done in the 15th five-year plan. They have fused all the niche technologies. They call it the productive forces. That is AI, ML, robotics, space, cyber, biosystems. They have fused everything together and they're calling it the productive forces. It is a cross-domain collaboration, an engine which will drive the technological transformation. They see it in one frame. The second is they have almost blurred the boundaries between civil, commercial, and military application of the technology. Why I'm saying technology is because each of these technologies, including space, they are so much interdependent on each other. Can we think about the space images, the imagery being received, and not using AI to interpret and analyze? Can we think about space without the data links being made secure to prevent and insulate them from cyber attacks? We cannot. So they all are interdependent, and we have to see it in one box. So the next thing is they've blurred the lines between civil, commercial, and military domains, which means the entire technology economy of China is a lab available for them to innovate and then quickly laterally glide it into the military. The speed of absorbing in the military is almost simultaneous to a breakthrough which happens in the civil domain. The next is they have assured year-on-year 7% increase in their R&D budget. I mean, broadly, my figures might not be to the dot, but US is about $1 trillion. They are about 608 billion, and we are around 20 billion. The figures may not be right, but the chasm that I'm trying to highlight is real. So there we need to put our attention. Now, I think we also need to look at all these niche technologies together, not because the Chinese looked at it that way, but because they are so self-supporting and so self-accelerating that we have to look at them together. Space technology, it provides such opportunities to bind it in a business model. It is not only double use or dual use, it is multiple use. While it only passes, your constellation passes over you in a blip in your landmass and in the areas that you are concerned about, your areas of interest, there is a whole globe available for you to wire a business model around it. So therefore, the space model that we are going to look at cannot meet only the national security requirements. It has to meet the national security requirements and also meet the global market demands. Only then it will be a viable business model. Otherwise, we will be craving for fun, which is unlikely to come with such free flow that we expect it to. Also, when we look at these niche technologies together in one frame, the thing which ails all of them is the same. And ironically, it is not technology which is ailing them. It is the process and our prioritization across these streams which we need to work on. We are aware about the delays which happen, the process which are cumbersome, and we are aware about the priority which is given to these technologies. Gentlemen, priority is such a great need here, which I'll try to highlight when I try to give some of my thoughts on the threats that we need to be cautious about. Gentlemen, we have been talking, everybody, every forum, I think we've been talking about AI. AI has reached such a state that it is, we can debate on time when it's going to happen, but I think the singularity is anywhere around the corner, 27, 30, 32, 35, we can debate. But a great AI model will design a great AI chip, semiconductor chip, which will train a great AI model. So this goes in a geometric progression. So unless we enter this cycle now, the chasm will be so wide that it will be just impossible for us to catch up. So we need to intervene here. And I just did a little bit of net research. The models that you get, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google, Gemini, whatever you call it, they're not the A1 models. The US Bureau of Industry and Security has classified these models in terms of the weights, the number of weights and training that they have carried out into tier 1, 2, and 3. 1 is for US and its very close allies, where we are not. 3 is for those where they don't want to get. And 2 is where we are. So while we understand their sensitivities of doing this, but the need is for us to get our own sovereign models for our use. The next thing is, quite obviously, we have 2 leverage points at this point in time. At this point in time, it may not be available subsequently. One is the demographic dividend. Because the past trend suggests that a country which had a demographic dividend, invariably the development and the progress was co-synchronous. But the past trend lines might not be the ones we are trying to extrapolate. Because manufacturing, we are now seeing along with human labor. Should the robotics take over, the way Elon is talking about Optimus and other humanoids, the human labor will be detached from manufacturing. Then this leverage which we have will be lost. So we need to catch up and we need to hurry up. The next thing is, while we have done a great job, our startups have done a great job of assembling the satellites together, the rockets together, but still a part of the content is not indigenous, and I don't blame them. Historically, if we see, every country which has progressed, even the most advanced countries, they have either absorbed the technology in form of JVs, and then learned, assimilated, innovated, and have become global market leaders. There are umpteen examples which we can look at. I shall try to give if I have some time later. The next thing, gentlemen, I have met few of our startups. They are tops on energy. They are possibly the best minds that we have. They have the energy, zeal, enthusiasm. But what they don't have is, because they are running a business model, they don't have an assured revenue stream. So if we as a nation want to build space as a capability, we have to assure them orders, long contract orders. Their insecurity of revenue flow should be cut off, and we should be able to assure them that. Grants and subsidies won't suffice. It's a one-time price, won't suffice. We need to give them long orders. How we go about doing it, that is for us. The next thing is world over. Because the second factor which I said, one was demography, the second was markets. That is a leverage point that we know it's bringing us benefits. But I think joint ventures is the way ahead, where apart from giving a tenant kind of model wherein they come in, they run their product, and a part of their earnings are given to the Indian entity, we should insist on IP transfers or transfer of technology, which is essential. And for this, people like us, the state, has to use its weight to support our industry so that the JV does happen. We will assimilate, and thereafter we'll innovate, and we will become global leaders.
You live for moments like this. Moments that invite you into a space where preparation makes room for discovery. There's no hesitation, no what ifs, just a steely calm and the certainty that you're ready. Ready for the unknown. The new 500 meters professional diver's automatic watch from Titan, 0 hour.
By imitating, but it learned, innovated, and became a global leader of today. I can give examples one after the other. Same is the case with automobile industries and other. So it is not a band-aid frontier that we don't have to dwell. When we have a JV, we have to absorb their pluses, we have to learn, and we have to localize the IP. While I have said that we need to do all this for the startups and our industry, but I also feel because the niche technology has to be niche, so it has to be globally competitive. It can't be kept within our frontiers. So therefore, the true sovereignty is a measure of the global market share that they will have, because they will have a global audit that their products which they produce are niche. We must hold our startups to extreme export targets. If our platform cannot win international tender, we are merely subsidizing our own obsolescence by giving them subsidies. So they should compete in the global market. We should feel proud when they get the contracts in the global market. That means the technology is indeed niche. Otherwise, somebody who is more niche will get a larger market share. He will produce goods at a cheaper rate, and because of competitive pressure, they will sell back to you. The last, while I've said all this, this is going to take some time. But our challenges and threats are rare. It is not that we have tomorrow our constellation, the thing is done and dusted. there are so many other related issues in space. For example, what comes to my mind first is there is a system how we want to download the data from the satellites. There has to be a ground station. It has to come to you. You have to fuse it. You have to interpret it. You have to fuse it with your ground inputs. Then you have to develop an intelligence. So let us first make sure that whether indigenous or not, we have a constellation to begin with. And we have the rest of the system that I talked about to fuse intelligence and the decision making. And slowly, the indigenous content in the constellation is increased progressively until one day when we aspire it to be a totally indigenous constellation. Because we are in a kind of situation in the global context, and especially in our neighborhood, that we need to be prepared immediately. So that takes priority. Thank you very much, sir. Rest possibly during the question answers, if at all any.
Thank you, sir, for that insightful address. It's my honor to now invite Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary to kindly deliver the special address.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. General Bhatt, thank you very much for inviting me here. And fellow panelists, thank you very much for having stolen my thunder and saying everything that needs to have been said today. So it doesn't leave me much to speak about, and I will not take much time between you and the interesting session coming up with the astronauts. Last week's headlines in the Times of India caught my attention. It said in the year 2025, Indian satellites experienced 160,000 near misses with space debris and had to carry out 18 maneuvers, collision avoidance maneuvers. Now, I, being an aviator, thought that near misses occurred only below the common line, but we never experienced so many occasions where we had to carry out maneuvers to avoid collisions. The figures are quite astounding by themselves. 11,000 active satellites, with the numbers probably reaching 30,000 by end of this decade, and almost 1.1 million pieces of space debris floating around. So the orbital infrastructure, like they say, is facing unprecedented challenges, all the way from launch to maintain, from security to sovereignty, and the congested environment is making the traditional monitoring systems more and more obsolete. The bottom line is that despite the infinity of space, the limited resources that are available are making, and the endangered availability of space orbits, orbital space and frequency is going to be a huge challenge for entire mankind. The ongoing conflicts across the globe have shown that the orbital high ground is probably as important as boots on the ground. The LEO has become a test bed for new technologies, resilient communications, real-time ISR, and secured communication links. Dr. Anupam Sharma mentioned about PNT from LEO satellites. I think it's an important aspect that we need to keep in mind. Let me first start with a quick look at what we could envisage as the future battle space, a domain where hypersonic missiles are tracked from orbit, drone swarms are jammed by satellite relays, and AI-driven decisions span continents in milliseconds. The reality of military operations today is that space will support every pillar of modern warfare: precision-guided munitions for centimeter target accuracy, hyperspectral and alien satellites for effective ISR and real-time battlespace awareness, secure SATCOM for command and control, countermeasures to mitigate any misadventure in space, Finally, we find that the ethical intent of technology for peaceful purposes is slowly finding duality in use as weapons in space. It was mentioned again by Dr. Anupam Sharma how orbital transfer vehicles meant for moving satellites from one orbit to another and to support on-orbit maintenance or on-orbit refueling have found military use in carrying out altitude maneuvers with EW payloads and assisting the concept of swarm military satellites. Robotic arms that were intended for space debris removal can now be used or can be a solution for kinetic space actions like grabbing or deorbiting of adversary satellites. The concept of inspector and guard satellites with military payloads are being populated in space for enhancing space situational awareness from space. So we find that the future of military operations will be determined not just by the speed of decision making, but the ability of shortening the sense, decide and act loop, primarily which is supported by assets from space. So when we realize that more and more reliance on space for future military operations is going to happen, we have to look at the profound issue of space security. How do we secure it? Firstly, with architectural resilience, we need to look at about replacing fragile, probably even legacy geostationary assets with more proliferated LEO constellations. I think yesterday what was highlighted was the failure of the IRNSS satellites to provide PNT. We need to now look at replacing probably the geostationary satellites with LEO constellations. Developing a robust space situational awareness architecture, real-time tracking is not optional, it is an existential requirement. Leveraging not only just ground-based telescopes and radars, but space-based sensors for creating an ecosystem is the prime requirement. Deterrence through denial and diplomacy can be attained through developing of counter-space capabilities, reversible jammers, cyber tools to spoof uplinks, and pairing them with the rules and norms for ethical space operations. This brings me to the core of today's theme and how India can achieve its military space aspirations by strengthening and synergizing India's defense and space industry. But before that, a very important aspect that I thought needs to be understood, that despite a limited understanding of the importance of space in society and politics, a dominant focus of on the scientific and economic rather than security dimensions of the new space age, our approach to space security needs to be much more clearly articulated than what is being done today. India's new space policy of 2023 involved the CMF. It had explicitly treated defense of space as a core national security pillar and not just an add-on. But in my opinion, this should be the starting point. This should lead on to the formulation of a space security strategy that would provide the necessary impetus to initiate a broader debate on the strategic relevance of space. This will help us to raise awareness of the vulnerabilities and threats, to expand space-specific expertise in the political world, among the ministries, think tanks, the armed forces, and the society at large. So without greater space literacy, strategic thinking fully adapted to the new geopolitical realities, it will not be possible to successfully address the many challenges of the increasing dynamics in space. The question is, who's going to do it? While ISPA could lead in coordinating the competitive domestic space industrial ecosystem and the research landscape, the clear strategy paper needs to be formulated by coordinating the available agencies that are existing today, starting with the DSA taking the lead, the ISPA, the InSpace, the Ministries of Defense, Communication, and so on. The strategy, clear strategy paper on control of key technologies, security of raw material, supply chains, measures with stricter export controls, foreign investment screening, all this needs to be laid out very clearly in our future strategy. There is still considerable untapped potential in our country for involving startups as key drivers of innovation. The Indian Armed Forces, DRDO, DSA in particular, needs to handhold the startup and industry community and give assurances in terms of technology proof when it comes to niche technologies. We'll agree that defense needs innovations at all times, and space innovation is no exception. We all have seen how the role of Elon Musk's Starlink system for the Ukrainian people and the military in war, which was already characterized as the first commercial space war. This has underscored the increasing relevance of commercial actors in national security, primarily due to the dual use and nature of space technology. So here I would consider that a high priority task for the DSA would be to define our strategic approach to space security and to lay the foundations for creating the necessary conditions to achieve the desired goals. Despite some encouraging steps in the recent years, we still have a number of challenges to overcome. This includes a clear vision based on realistic assessment of risks and threats, prioritization of security in our overall approach to space, provision of sufficient expertise, financial resources, and necessary capabilities to the armed forces, greater involvement of commercial actors, and cooperation with international partners. Given our strong civilian, economic, and military dependence on space and the associated vulnerabilities, I feel that the nation should view the use of space as a permanent operational task. From the Air Force background, for example, we look at air defense of the nation as a permanent operational task. It is conducted 24/7 around the year. This is something that I think must be put down in the national space security strategy, that the use of space, whether it is supporting missions with space-based capabilities or providing space situational awareness or protecting our space infrastructure both in space as well as on ground, should be an operational task allotted to one of the services. The academia industry economy plays a crucial part in developing technologies. It goes without saying. It is very heartening to note that DRDO has started a new path, moving away from the legacy R&D cycles by actively collaborating with the space startups for proving the technology for military use. I am confident that the armed forces will leverage this and capitalize on these arrangements. To strengthen our defense of space and defense in space, technology-driven civil-military procurement procedures are needed. Key areas of SATCOM, SSA, SDA, etc. We need to have the strategy to integrate cross-agency funding to provide these facilities or these assets, not only to the armed forces but even for civilian use. We have to overcome the challenge of the modernization plans which still face lengthy procurement delays. We need to have ever increasing or ever, rapidly increasing innovation cycles, and the ability to go across ministries for procurement of space-based assets is something that this strategy should clearly lay out who is going to be responsible for what kind of asset. We need to ISPA probably can look at improving the interagency decision making here. At some stage, I think we may even need an interministerial steering group for space security coordination, which would include assessment, crisis management in case of any events in space, and also for long-term procurement strategies. Lastly, the last point I have is to secure specific expertise in space. It is important to recruit and train qualified personnel for the space domain. Space expertise must be developed and above all retained, particularly in the military. We need to form newer military career paths for people who are trained in space. Whether it is the engineering sciences, space technologies, or even for the heroes sitting here, the astronauts, the military needs to chart out very clear career paths for all of them to have, make the attractive career models for people to choose this field for specialization while they are in service. So to conclude, I would like to highlight that success will depend on not just sustained political will and demand pull mechanisms, but to make it more attractive for the industry, for the academia, and for the nation as a whole. If we can institutionalize this synergy through some joint governance, shared infrastructure, and mission-oriented roadmaps, we will not only secure our interests in orbit and on the battlefield, but will also redefine the boundary between space and defense in the national imagination. So once again, compliments to Team ISPA for conducting this seminar, and thank you, DG ISPA, for inviting me here. I wish this seminar all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very pivotal address. On the occasion of Indian DefSpace Symposium 2026, we are proud to release the ISPA Handbook, a comprehensive encyclopedia designed to serve as a vital resource for our entire ecosystem. May I request Director General, Indian Space Station and Director ISPA, along with our esteemed guest dignitaries, to kindly release the ISPA Handbook. For the group photograph, please, sir. Thank you, sir. Nabha Prashram Deepam, touch the sky with glory. In the history of every great nation, there are individuals who represent. Sir, in the history of every great nation, there are individuals who represent the pinnacle of courage and the promise of new frontier. Today, we are graced by the presence of the men who will carry the Indian tricolor into the silent vastness of space. They are not just pilots, they are the torchbearers of a Gaganyaan dream. It is my absolute honor to invite on stage for a special felicitation of our Indian Gaganats, Group Captain Prashant Balakrishnan Nair and Group Captain Swanshu Shukla. Please, with a big round of applause. May I request Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary to kindly felicitate our distinguished astronaut, the Group Captain Prashant B. Nair, Kirti Chakra. The Group Captain Subhanshu Shukla, Ashok Chakra. For a group photograph, please. He's just lying down. Thank you to our distinguished astronauts. May I now request Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary to kindly felicitate our guest dignitaries on the dais, to Dr. Anupam Sharma, to Air Vice Marshal Manu Meena, to Vice Admiral Sanjay Dasjeet Singh, to Lieutenant General Vikas Rohela, to Lieutenant General R.S. Raman, may I request DG ISPA to kindly felicitate Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary. Thank you, sir. May I request for a group photograph, please? Concluding of the plenary session, now we will begin with the most awaited fireside chat.
बैठ जा ना भाई, बैठ जा। तो नीचे को हो जा, पर नीचे को हो जा बस।
ऑफिस आ रहा है।
थैंक्स सर।
कटे के लेके गए ना सॉरी
सही है।
बीच में जो जूम आउट मारे हैं ना उसको कवर करेंगे।
May I please request all of you to kindly remain seated. We're going to be beginning with the fireside chat with our distinguished astronauts, Group Captain Nair and Group Captain Shukla. Earlier we spoke about the Artemis 2 crew pushing the boundaries of the lunar orbit, a mission that proves space is the ultimate frontier of human grit. Today we have in our midst the men who are writing the Indian chapter of that very same cosmic story. They are the torchbearers of our Gaganyaan dream, representing the perfect synergy between the wings of Indian Air Force and the vision of ISRO. Before we begin, it's my distinct honor and on behalf of the entire Indian space fraternity, we extend a heartfelt congratulations to Group Captain Nair for being conferred with the Kirti Chakra and to Group Captain Shubham Shukla for being conferred with the Ashoka Chakra. These honors are testament to our exceptional courage and unwavering commitment to the nation. To explore their journey, their rigorous preparation and the strategic pathways the mission opens for our nation, we move on to the most awaited segment, the fireside chat with the Indian astronauts. It is my honor to welcome the distinguished Gaganauts on the stage, Group Captain Prashant Balakrishnan Nair, Kirti Chakra, Group Captain Subhash Shukla, Ashok Chakra, and to lead this exploration in the future of our national space pathways, I'm delighted to invite Ms. Devika Devan, Senior News Editor at the NewsX, to steer this much-awaited conversation.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Aditi. It's my distinct honor to be in the presence of distinguished military and defense personnel, our business leaders, our youth, and of course, our space icons. My gratitude to the Indian Space Association and to Lieutenant General Bhatt, to Group Captain Rao for really instilling their faith in me to carry this conversation. There's a lot of weight. Everyone's saying most awaited, most awaited. How do we follow up with some of the most brilliant speeches we've heard, eye-opening conversations that have already started in our minds. And I hope that we can continue on that note. Of course, it is my pleasure to once again share the stage with our space icons, Group Captain Nair and Group Captain Shukla. They will soon be undertaking an arduous journey. And when that journey is a success, it will be a success not just for India, but it will be a success for humankind. And that's our hope and belief. And for that, I'd like to begin by thanking you for undertaking this very critical job. But this is not the first critical job of your careers. You've spent your careers in the cockpits of some of India's most advanced fighter jets. I just want to begin this conversation by understanding from you, because some of our previous speakers were pointing out how we need to diversify as far as military preparation is also concerned. I want to understand from you then, on that note, what is the one thing that you had to unlearn as a pilot during your preparation and now transition into the Gaganyaan astronauts to prepare for that life of an astronaut? Group Captain Nair.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Devika. Jai and Jai Bharat to everybody. A lot of my seniors are here, my gurus, who I consider as Mata, Pita, Guru and Devam. And so I can't start taking all the names, but definitely Chau sir is there, and Pat sir now, and all of this, Mita sir, and Agarwal sir is there over here, and Murli Krishna sir, and my previous CEO was there yesterday, I believe, Chotu Bhaduria sir, and Speedy sir is there, and a lot of other colleagues and all. Thank you for inviting me and over here, and thanks Aditi also for comparing it. Today the entire team which took place in the morning also, most of us, I'm sure, in for Shuks and all that, we are military people, right? We are Air Force fighter pilots, in essence, and test pilots. And when you sit there, you see the discussion of all these strategy and tactics. Your heart wants to be there. And then you realize the entire discussion today was of civil-military fusion, which is the need of the hour, whether, that's what other countries are doing. And we almost, as an astronaut and as military background astronaut, stand at the tip of what actually it means to have civil-military fusion. We wear our Air Force ranks also. At the same time, we wear something which represents the aspirations of all the youngsters. And why this national security is all our aspirational dream is not that, because what I'm saying is that if you have to go to space, it's only to become an astronaut. Remember that it can all happen only if there is national security. So you can't emphasize this even more. Now coming to your question on, because it actually leads on to that. What does it mean to transit from becoming a fighter pilot to an astronaut, right? It's not something different, because civil-military fusion out here means that whatever we do and whatever we pioneer in space is going to have widespread implications, being the first of the people are going to do it. For example, if we go to space, and as an India, we'll be the fourth country to send our people in our own spacecraft, we're going to be speaking for the entire global south, because they may not be able to send their guys to space. But once we go there, we know how India does everything different, right? We'll be there on the high table who makes the rules for the outer space treaty. Definitely it's going to be renegotiated, right? And only those people of the capability will be called to that. So we find that when we go from the fighter cockpit to the, literally to the space capsule cockpit, there's a bigger strategic role also on our shoulder, because that involves diplomacy. It involves military strategy also. And it involves more international relations because when you go to space, we are interacting with all the other nations also. Even as we sit here right now, with what was the problem between the US and Russia, there are American astronauts training in Russia and there are Russian astronauts in Houston. Many people don't know that. So I realized that one is that I had to expand my view more strategically, something which I had to unlearn, and that Anupam Agrawal sir also during our selection, I think that's one of the criteria, is that we as fighter pilots are used to doing things very individualistically because obviously when we go as a team also, even though we may be cut off from communications, certain decisions we have to take on the spot in those fast flying machines, which will save the mission, the aircraft, and the human being. Maybe not necessarily in that sequence, but it depends. Mission is most important. Now, when we go to space in our capsules, we go up as a team. The entire nation is watching the costly programs, and there is a national agenda. But over there, rather than taking individualist decisions, it's very important, even if you think you know everything, to defer your decision to a broader set of experts. That would be the mission control center, your colleagues, your systems. So rather than taking situations which are required on an individual basis, you defer against what you have been taught your entire life to immediately take action on the machine which you're flying. So that for me is something which was required to unlearn. And I think it's a beautiful thing because it also falls into civil military fusion, that our military leaders are realizing we need to defer to the civilians also in this new game of satellite and space warfare. The civilians understand that without the military, there is no civil life. So it is national security. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a beautifully put perspective there. Group Captain Shukla, same question to you.
Check. A very good morning to all of you. I would also like to acknowledge all my seniors who are here. And my target audience is generally very different. School kids, where I go and talk about what my mission was and to get them inspired. But I would thank ISPA and General Butt in particular to have these discussions, because I feel the more we talk about such issues, the more awareness is created and we would be better able to take these decisions in future. On a lighter note, what you asked, what did we have to unlearn? So we were supposed to start at 9:30 and finish at 10:40. And being an Air Force pilot myself, everything works backward from the TOT that you have to make, the time on target. So in the initial days, when I came out of the forge and on deputation to an organization, I had to stop learning to be perturbed about not being on time. That was one thing that I had to get used to be. But on a serious note, I think I would also second what Papa sir has just said. When you start training as an astronaut, and especially the background is very apt. When you're sitting in a cockpit, you do work in teams. There is a huge team that goes into combat, and you learn to work together as a team. But in that cockpit, especially when you're in a single cockpit fighter, all the decisions that are happening inside are on you. And you also have to be confident, because what you are going to do is essentially fight an enemy. And so you have to really believe in your skills. Sometimes, even downplaying what the other person can do, bordering on arrogance, I would say, if you want to win the combat. The shift happens when you come inside a capsule. You are not alone. There are people who are sitting with you. But even more than that, there is a huge team on ground which is sitting. And you really cannot know everything. It is just so much more complex. In the mission, when I was going up in space, there were things that were happening. I was told about issues in real time, but I did not understand exactly what is causing it or what is the solution about it. So there would be times when you will not have the information and you will have to rely on other people to make this decision, or just trust it blindly, just not knowing what is happening. So I think that was one of the biggest learning from being this, confined in a single space of being able to take decisions, than relying on a huge team, which is going to ensure that whatever you're doing, the mission eventually becomes a success. I think that would also, for me, be the biggest change from the Air Force to this domain, alongside the time thing. So, yes.
Absolutely. And of course, you've both been chosen for your very specific capabilities. And as Aditi pointed out, aspirations of 1.4 billion people also playing on your minds at all times. And of course, we wish you all the success for the mission in the future. But Rukapna, you said something interesting. You said that India will soon be writing the rules as well, especially when we do achieve a massive feat like Gaganyaan. We did so when Chandrayaan 3 landed on the South Pole, and we did it for a budget lesser than what a Hollywood movie costs. And that was an eye-opening moment for the entire world. But I want to understand from you, both trained with international agencies, so you do understand how the world works here. What is the one thing of the Indian way of doing things that surprises your foreign counterparts?
Thank you. Great question. And yeah, I'd like to take on what I started last also. Why is it that when we send somebody to space, people will actually be cheering for us? Because I'm 100% sure. Remember, don't go too long back also, when COVID happened, we are among the only countries. First of all, we have to have the capability to make your own vaccine. We can't just be, we are not a Fiji or a Suriname or a Pakistan or any of the countries. We are India. And we can make our own vaccine. And what did we do before we ourselves had it? We gave it to the rest of the world. No other country did it who had the capability. Very few countries have the capability. And secondly, it's not just the government. Did you see one protest by any citizen of India? Nothing. It was taken for granted that that's what we do. So there's not some cliche statement which I'm just giving. It is the truth and it's a fact. But memories play funny things and we don't remember that. This time when we go to space, to change the game, you have to be in the game. You'll only be taken seriously if you are proving a capability. The capability to put a man in space is very important. And there is a first mover advantage that we be the only fourth country you can do it. Now, once you do that, you'll be invited to high table, not because there's some invitation list, because you have the capability. So now when the new oceans are being, crossed, like, we 300, 400 years, some oceans were crossed and we were colonized, but we didn't do any of that. This time when we send somebody to space, we know, and the rest of the world will know that when India does something, they will also take care of us. So the global south and other countries, everybody can't send their human beings to space. They know that unlike the carving up of space, the moon or Mars, which is already going to happen, this time when we are there, we will be given a place on the high table. We missed the nuclear high table with the NPT, we missed the UN Security Council seat, and you know where the world is right now. When India is there, there is a confidence that the rest of the world has, and we all know it. So this time when we go to space, the Indian way of doing it is that we're going to do it for everybody. Literally, it's going to be for everybody, but we're going to make sure our country prospers also in the bargain. And also from security point of view and strategy and a true stature in the world, it's going to increase with this. So when we were training, whether it's in Moscow or in NASA, they were saying that when is it that you guys are going to launch? And we would like to come and fly with you, especially even the Europeans, the Canadians and all, the Japanese, because they don't have their own spacecraft, They would love to come and fly with us also. So they don't have their own spacecraft. Now they either have to go with US, China or Russia. And from the Western point of view, Russia and China is a no-no. So they only stuck with the US. You'll be you're there for everyone, right? So it's a new way of opening a whole new paradigm.
Absolutely. Group and Shukla, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I think it's a very relevant question. The biggest visibility that we've got because of the missions that we have been able to do is how effective we were with the cost management. You yourself mentioned that it was less than a movie budget of a Hollywood movie. And I think while it is a virtue, it can also be problematic as we are stepping into the future. We should not consider this to be the only reason why we are doing something. As we step into newer domains and more ambitious missions, I think it would need a lot more than what we have been doing. The second point that I would like to highlight is there was also an element of surprise for the world because of the nature of the space program which we had and it's nascent, we were in the development stage. Anything that we were achieving got highlighted, out of the context because people were really not expecting us to do a mission like Chandrayaan or Mangalyaan, reaching Mars in our maiden attempt or landing on the south pole of the moon. That surprise element is gone. People are expecting out of us now. Everybody, like what Papa Sir was mentioning, that people are looking at us and they're saying that we would like to fly with you. We would like to go into Gaganyaan with you. So everybody is kind of looking at us expectantly that we need to make this happen. So historically, yes, I think that we do it differently because we the space when ISRO was formed, the guiding philosophy was that
प्लेन डोसा, ओनियन डोसा, मैसूर डोसा, मसाला डोसा, इडली वड़ा, उपमा पूरी, केसरी बात, खारा बात, जामुन, कॉफी सब लेके आओ.
Fasting टूटेगी?
On time. What is tappam?
Farm Easy lab tests on time. नहीं तो फ्री।
Change, but spaceflight has a saying that only constant is change. So we really need to adapt, and we need to relook at the virtues that we are celebrating. That will they help us going into the future and achieving the missions that we want to achieve, or do we need to change something for that? Because we need to adapt because the world in this domain is changing really fast. Thank you.
Absolutely. And when we speak about the world changing really fast, from your vantage point, Captain Nair, I want to pick this up with you first. How is training and preparation for programs like Gaganyaan actually helping build a culture of high reliability, which of course did exist in India, but how is it helping improve that and build further on that, which is something that we certainly need when it comes to high stakes environments such as space programs, even defense for that matter.
Thank you, Devika. So, we don't have any of this technology, meaning human certification for space. We have to do it for our own systems, and we're starting from scratch. So you just think about it, try and go back to the days of maybe Yuri Gagarin when they went from USSR, or the entire gang of Glenn and Neil Armstrong by the time they went to moon and all. You have to make your systems based on your own requirements and conditions, not just using government, factories, industries, and research, but also the private industries. To understand that ISRO works through a concept of actually giving contracts to many people to make certain components, and there is a lot of reliability from there. And that's why we got a very good success rate. Now, when you do this, when a human being comes into the cockpit, remember we are the first 4. So ISRO had a culture of sending satellites, and very successful. It's been very interesting for us to sit with all the cutting edge technology, with the scientists, and we are closely associated with Institute of Aerospace Medicine of Air Force, and also with the Space Department of Air Force. So we are able to bring that element of why a human being is very important, and it has a different thought process required. To give you an example, imagine when Chandrayaan failed, Chandrayaan 2 failed, and the entire country had a heavy heart. Imagine if Chandrayaan failed with a human being inside. It will set back the entire program, because now we'll be doubly, triply sure to make sure that before we get back, we need to do so much more research and all that. So there is more responsibility on any organization the moment a human being is there, because we have to make sure that it has to be 100% right 100% of the time. Or like a joke I tell to some kids and all, what he and I will happen if certain component fails, like the deorbital is that we'll continue to remain a satellite forever, because orbital mechanics is that you'll continue. Then maybe one of the debris removal companies have to come certain amount of time and make sure that deorbit takes place. So it's very important. The entire nation, the entire world is watching. And what we have been able to see in ISRO, and I'm sure Shuk's also agrees with me on this, is that the bunch of scientists which we are working with, all the other people, agencies which are working it, everyone understands this totally. We are 100% sure. It's not that they don't understand it, and we are very happy to handhold most of them who walk through what we know, because as test pilots in the Indian Air Force, we know this field very well. How do you take new equipment and new systems and make sure the mission takes place? But the mission is of no consequence if the human being who's operating it cannot do it, because there is no separation between the machine and the human being. They are the mission. So for mission successful, it is important that human being is an integral part, and I think we are in very capable hands in this mission. Thanks.
I'm really glad that you raised that example, because as you said, that as soon as you put a human being inside the space flight, it becomes much more complex than just a satellite tech, right? There's life support that's involved, there are crew support systems that are involved. So coming to the theme of the conference, for everyone sitting here, Group Captain Nair, what are some of the biggest aspects where private Indian space startups or even space defense industry can come in to start supporting future missions in your assessment?
Thank you, Devika, for asking it, because there's something close to my heart. So Shuk's and I go to different schools, and everywhere around, everybody seems to be making rockets and satellites, including all the startups. Everybody, and amazed at the rate at which they're making it. And obviously, the technology and the software related with it. I partly joke, but I'm serious also, start making space toilets. Because there is only one successful space toilet in the world, even as of now. And that is the Russian space toilet. Even the American space toilet has not worked, they're deorbiting it. And the only successful portion of the American space, the Russian space product the Americans are using in ISS is the urine treatment system. So the Russians literally go and give their urine to the Americans, and the Americans distill their Russian urine and make sure that today's urine is tomorrow's coffee. So it's like one big collaboration. So I would tell all the startups, I would say everyone, if you want to concentrate, look at the things that they don't want to look at, us to look at. So I'll just give a very a good example from something maybe it's not related to this, but it's related, because like all the senior people who are sitting out here, where satellites, space, AI, cyber, drones, unmanned stuff, we don't know where it all is stopping. Everything is correlated. I had a talk with one of the senior leaderships of Zoho, and we all know what happened with Nayara technology when Microsoft pulled the plug and they went without software for 2 weeks. They said, how do these things actually get implemented, right? And this will also come to Lieutenant General Raman's thing on how do we make sure that there are repeat orders for our startups. This is a whole of government approach, and whole of government meaning government will support you through the embassies and their commercial wings out there, and by ISPA taking you out and making sure startups. But I think private industry and our Duranda type marketing is also required to make sure our startups get repeat orders. So just think about it. We have got startups into everything, but we don't have startups for space law, space diplomacy, and these are the things which are going to dictate whether you can make the laws. The Americans are very good at that. Okay, and nothing against Americans and all. I love them. We have trained over there. You should have startups over there on the art and diplomacy and the communications. So these are the places which you should also put it, because finally the rules are going to be written by them. Space medicine, many other things, the human-centric products, all these things are there. The space suit, many of these things which they don't want you to do anything about. And how are these things actually marketed? Just think about it. So as coming back to the Zoho leadership, they're saying that if we would like to sell our software, our RTI, WhatsApp killer, they say, and our kind of ERPs. So the problem that happens is that there are just big 5 consulting companies in the world, KPMG, Ernst & Young, and the other few which are there. Just think about it. We do not have a consulting company in our country, even though we constitute a majority of those consulting companies. Now, if you take them for consulting, very sublimely, they will push in that, okay, you need to change this thing, and you can just plug in this Microsoft, or you take in this X and you put this Twitter here. They will use all their companies as a surrogate way of marketing it. And you will say, okay, the report has come by KPMG, so I need to do this report. So nobody consciously is promoting foreign companies, but this is what happens. Do you have an equivalent consulting company in our country when he's going abroad and saying, hey, you know what, you need to change so-and-so system to make your economy system efficient? When you're doing this, you need to plug in a Zoho mail, you need to plug in an Orbit Aid, you need to plug in this, and you need to take some advice from ISPA. You see how the rest of the world works. This is exactly the way of doing it. It is a whole of government, it's a whole of consulting approach. So I would say this is the thing which I have learned, which we need to do. ISPA is doing fantastic strides in that, but we need to actively market our people to make sure that the human-centric products or anything which is related to things which we bring, as India, as a consciousness, is marketed to the world outside using our own companies.
That's a fantastic point, and I fully concur with that. That we do need to focus now on marketing ourselves as well. But Group Captain Shukla, there's something that Lieutenant General Raman said about China having the ability today to blur the lines between civil, commercial, and military tech. Bringing that to the Indian context, much of the technology that's being used in Gaganyaan, the life support systems, the communication system, it does have very critical applications for defense as well. So how do we then move into a space where we ensure that a breakthrough in space technology is very rapidly adopted to our defense tech as well?
I think that is an excellent question, and I do agree when Raman was mentioning about this. He called these the clubbing together as productive forces, and treating them as one cohort rather than looking at them individually. To be very specific to your question, I would say that we should know what we are looking for. We should be ready to look for solutions. And I'll give you an example. When Sputnik was launched in 1957, that satellite was designed only to send a radio signal, beep, around the world, which any radio station on ground could receive. And that beep became a nightmare for US because in some ways Russia had beaten them to orbit. The satellite was launched first. But the US defense was looking for, that was a Cold War era. So US defense was looking for solutions to pinpoint submarines within the ocean, and they could not find any particular solution to that. But when the signal was going around the Earth, the scientists realized that by tracking them and measuring the Doppler, they could accurately measure the position of the satellite. And so if you can do this from Earth to ground, you could do theoretically same from space to Earth. And that is what the germination of GPS was. And today when we don't even think about using the GPS, you find its application everywhere. It started from the requirement. So I think when we are standing at the cusp of developing some new key technology, especially with the human spaceflight, I think the defense sector also, we should be knowing what are we wanting, going into the future. And as these solutions get developed, you can start from structures, lightweight, composites, alloys, they can be utilized, which are very good at protecting you from high-speed projectiles, MMOD debris, and all these things can be used. Environmental control system in extreme areas, that can be deployed on ground as well. The biggest thing is communications, which has been spoken about enough here. One of the key problems that we faced while I was there on orbit just for 18 days, and we were manually clicking pictures. But we generated so much of data that at one point of time, we got a message from NASA that, you please don't take time lapses anymore, because time lapses generate a lot of data in a very short period of time. So because they were not able to download the data. And it took about a month for a backlog of data to come back to Earth. Now, what's the solution of that? Maybe optical communication, a higher bandwidth signal, a laser. So these are the things that start out from some other requirement, but they find the potential application in defense. So two things, we are going to be developing some key technologies, but the defense sector, we should be keeping our eyes and ear open and projecting the requirement that this is what we need. These are the areas that we are looking for solutions. And I think the cross-talking, the cross-pollination will get us those solutions even for the defense sector. And I totally agree. I think that the boundaries are getting blurred, that every sector is going to be impacted by this new field. And all of us should be aware of what is happening in other domains so that we can extract what we want. Thank you.
Okay, building on that, then I want to understand from you. One of our previous speakers spoke about, the space economy being a $1 trillion economy very soon, and we want to have at least 10% of that pie. So for all the defense and space industries that are sitting here, which sector, in your assessment, is it satellite data, launch services, or space-grade materials, will be the next big thing, not just for the Indian space market, but for the global space market? So if I'm a defense startup today, or a space startup, or a tech founder, what is it that I really need to be pushing my R&D towards?
Thank you. For my question itself, generally it is implied that we have to do things only in science related. And like I said some time back, the people who are actually going to call the shots, just think about this. Right now in the Iran and the US-Israel war also, they have got all the satellites, there is AI, there's a lot of things happening. But the one thing which is causing all the chaos is the human element, and which is keeping everybody guessing from both sides, right? You may have all kinds of technology, as long as the human element is not enabled to take the decision in time, nothing is going to happen. So this is again what I'm coming back to when I use the model of consulting, when I say KPMG and other people and all. Are you going to enable an environment where you can observe, orient, and that decide, OODA loop, decide and then act something very fast? And for decision, that fusion is going to be very important. Right now, most of this we have left to the defense. Just think about it right now. The biggest defense companies in your mind right now in the world, you must be thinking are Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and all that. No, it's actually Anthropic, it's Google, and it's all these companies. They are the ones who are calling the shots. Those lines are totally blurred, and you're all using it right now also, and that will continue. It doesn't mean not to use them. And you know what US government has told to Anthropic also, right? That your Claude will be banned for most of it. And then we know Palantir is the one which is there doing the whole AI for the US. And their chief technology officer, Shyam Shankar, is also given a US military rank. What is required actually in the civil military fusion is to change your entire kind of framework and how we do. So when I want to tell you what is the private sector supposed to get into, I may actually dare to say that it's time maybe to even, we have got territorial armies for Echo Task Force. for planting trees. Very good, very nice. But we are the only country who's got such great brains. Imagine Shyam Shankar is by the name, obviously Indian American, second generation, but he's given a military rank in the US military because for obvious reasons, right? So we should have startups and enablers in this policy and diplomacy and law, and because these are the ones who are going to be driving the world. And once we have this kind of thing, there will be maximum public-private participation in this country. Just think about it right now. We have got so many people in Bangalore, Delhi, and all this who are contributing to the world outside, whether it's semiconductors or anything. We'll make all these startups, and then US will come and buy it off the shelf, like a commercial off-the-shelf product. You know what are the biggest? We think about Flipkart being bought by Walmart. I don't know how many of you remember that as a private commercial acquisition. No, they bought the entire data. Do you think in the present day our country would have allowed it? And so we need to see all these prospective things which are going to be power for national security for us. Okay, so things like this, TikTok was, the arm was bought by US and made sure the things which is going to operate in US is going to be totally US aligned. We are a country, we use Facebook, we use Microsoft Office, we use everything. I'm not saying to ban any of this, but I think our ecosystem and our people, like rightly the generals on stage have said about it, we need to enable those startups who are not just making products which can be bought commercially off the shelf by an US tomorrow, but to make sure that it is aligned with the national security. And I would dare to say most of it need not be in the science and technology regime. It will be more in the leadership regimes. That is what enables you to take decisions. And technology can be embedded in that. Thank you.
Okay, Group Captain Shukla, if you can add to that, because in this current scenario that we're looking at, synergy between the space sector and, say, the defense forces will become increasingly more and more critical. And at the same time, it will have larger implications for long-term national security. So as Group Captain Nair was pointing out, I want to then understand from you, yes, theoretically, there's an understanding that, yes, synergy has to be there. But how do we ensure that our space industry as well as our defense industries, and they're getting more and more private entrants now, how do we ensure that they remain competitive while at the same time they're aligned towards our specific national security and strategic goals?
I would, in a while, answer that, but I would like to comment on what Papa sir was saying, the economy part of it. If I understand correctly, your question was that if a founder or a tech startup in India wants to do something, what is it that they should be looking for? So I'm sure a lot of people would be understanding this, but the economy is like a tree. Any economy is like a tree, especially in space sector. There is an upstream segment, there is a midstream segment, and there is a downstream segment. And the trunk is the upstream segment, which is, there is not a lot of application. It is just your access to space. The bigger branches are the midstream segment, which are holding and supporting all the other smaller branches and the leaves. The leaves themselves would be the downstream application, where the maximum revenue is being generated at the application sector. Even it is the biggest market share today, and it will continue to be so in the coming future as well. The application is what is going to drive the money, because you are essentially opening it to a number of users. But to have that, there has to be involvement. Obviously, the market is going to drive the commercial sector. There is going to be no issues. But the government or the sovereign has to hold the upstream and the midstream segment and handhold this particular sector. Definitely, there is no doubt about that. Then only this entire thing is going to grow into a full-blown tree. Otherwise, it is not going to happen. To the second part, I would just quickly summarize. You asked, how do we ensure the synergy between these two sectors? And I think DefSpace is a great word to start. Where we are sitting today and joining together, thinking alike, talking about issues. Like I said, defense has to understand what is happening in space. Space has to understand what defense wants, what is the requirement of defense. And when this understanding is there, I think it will become seamless. Once an asset goes to space, it is available. It is there. You can put what sensors you want. You can derive whatever application you want out of it. So that is the need today, that all the departments in the country need to speak to each other. And we need to figure out what is it that we want to send to space and what are the potential applications. And that is how we'll drive synergy. So there has to be a central agency of sorts which decides the application or usage of space, of how India wants to use space, whether it is for its defense sector, whether it is for its agriculture sector, any disaster control, or whatever sectors. But It has to be consolidated at a single place where the requirements come together and everybody understands what is the potential and what can be done when we launch an asset to space.
All right, speaking of potential in future, I have to now wrap up this conversation, but I want to open up one last question to both of you. Imagine that we're sitting here 10 years from now in 2036. What is the conversation you hope that we'll be having about India's defense and space sector? Nair.
Like the general theme which I say, I think our time has come, and every situation throws fantastic opportunities. In adversity there is opportunity. And Ashok was mentioning some time back about Sputnik 1957. It gave a lot of heart attacks to the Western NATO alliance and the US, and not knowing what's happening on the other side of the then Iron Curtain. But remember, because of that suffering or the pain, DARPA got instituted, a Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. Otherwise, it never happened. And it benefited both defense and civilian. They're the reason DARPA net happened, internet happened, they're the reason GPS happened, and many other things. And their tagline was never again technological surprise. So out of adversity, and we know exactly what is happening in the world right now, we cannot live in a cocoon. And at the same time, you see what's happening in India. While the entire world around is imploding, right from our neighbors to many others, we are sitting here in a fantastic place without any concern and allowed to discuss all this. So I would say maybe by 2036, we are looking at an entirely different world, which we can almost get a flavor of right now, in which we will be a big driver from technology, but also from leadership point of view. And something like which I alluded to something, or the UN, to many things are going to get changed. So why I'm telling all that is that I cannot give a picture of just space as divorced from the international situation. I think it's a place where we see in Star Trek and many other places where the world is getting over, but since those movies are made by America and the West, now you have disproportionate Americans in the leadership and Western. I think this is going to be more equitably distributed, in which our country is going to be a driver in many technologies and many policy-driven bodies. So I can see that many of the drivers, especially as a rep for most of the countries who do not have adequate space technology, India is going to be the hub center for that. And like I said, sometime back, Indian Space Association, you guys are going to have your hands full, because many of those other agencies and countries are going to look at you for plug and play. Because they'll say, how are you doing it? Because this ecosystem to get something like this activating is actually rocket science, and many people are not able to do that. So that's what I feel will happen. Thank you.
Great perspective. Rupa, should I leave the last word with you?
I know this is waiting and we are out of time. I will not speak for long. What we did today, we were projecting certain architectures. Let's say examples of China was being mentioned, or what US is doing today, and where we need to go in the future. I would only say that my vision would be 2036 or beyond, when we are having this conversation. We are projecting some conceptual frameworks, futuristic frameworks, not what anybody has done. And our frameworks have been projected in other countries, and people are trying to copy what we are doing. How we are doing it differently. We are playing catch up as of now. Yes, we are not there yet, but I think if we invest enough resources and time in the right place and right direction, I think we have the potential to really lead this sector in a good way. The scale does not matter. The way we do it matters. How we find unique ways of exploiting space. So yes, I would like to see that sitting in the same room, we are projecting something which is really unique, which has not been done anywhere in the world, and India is going to talk about it and implement it, which then gets copied by everybody else.
Thank you so much. That's our time for that very, very important conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Group Captain Prashant B. Nair, Group Captain Subhanshu Shukla, they will be going to space very, very soon. A huge round of applause for our space icons. I'll be our this conversation. Aditi, over to you.
Thanks, Group Captain Nair and Group Captain Shukla and Devika for this very fascinating conversation. I think hearing about the transition from fighter cockpits to space modules remind us that for our Brahma, the sky is never the limit. So, The former Chief of the Air Staff 2021-2024 with over 3,800 flying hours on MiG-29, MiG-29 and Sukhoi 30 MKI aircraft, commissioned to the IAF in 1982, served in key operations like MiG-Root and the Kargil War, held major training and staff operations including the Vice Chief of the Air Staff and AOC Western Air Command. Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, Lieutenant R.S. Raman, PDSM, ADSM, YSM, GGMI Indian Army. He was commissioned into the infantry in June 1989 and currently serves the Director General of the Military Intelligence Indian Army. And Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, PDSM, UISM, ADSM, SM, VSM retired, Director General of United Indian Space Association. May I request Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt to kindly welcome the audience.
And very importantly, we would be meeting the people who lead our aspirations into space, not only for the armed forces, but for the entire nation. And that is the two astronauts who are here sitting with us in the room today. We'll have a special session with them and an interaction after the opening morning session. A very deep connect of uniform and outer space is what they represent here for all of us. We welcome Shivanshu Shukla and, okay, I'll not talk of the rank, and Group Captain Papa Nair. Both of you, welcome here. We're so proud to have you here. With this, I would welcome you all, and I assure you, you will have a very interesting day. Day one was really great, and people did not leave the hall till 6 o'clock, which was really, for us as organizers, was really a moment of pride. Thank you, and best wishes for an interesting day today. Jai Hind.
May I now request Dr. Anupam Sharma to kindly deliver his keynote. Good morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few weeks back, I was talking to Chairman DRDO, and what he said was very important message to me. He said the world is changing, we have to adapt the change, and if we don't adapt the change, we are going to sink. Today when we talk about the topic empowering the space industry to enhance defense operational readiness, the time has come, and this is one of the most important things which has to happen, and we have to start working in the direction. Next slide, please. So, in just 10 minutes, I'll be covering few slides to give you the message, my thought process about how to empower the space industry to enhance defense operational readiness, starting from the strategic foundation, the enabling technologies which are required to make it happen, how we are going to integrate the commercial technologies with the services. There are issues like policy, legal, and financial implications to this policy. Something very important that without innovation we cannot we cannot see the future, how it has to happen, and finally, in Indian context, how this needs to be done. Look at the paradigm shift as on today. The defense space, we used to talk, the development velocity was 7 to 15 years. I have seen myself. Today we talk about delivering goods in 12 to 24 months. The cost of to orbit, we used to think that we require specialized payload. The cost used to be very high. Today we talk that not so special payload to meet the service requirements and the cost is very low. As far as the risk is concerned, earlier it was thought that whatever I launched as it should not fail. Today, things have come when we say that fail fast, learn fast. That's where that 24 months is coming. Today we are talking not a specific satellite with a specific application. Tomorrow we are going to talk about the software-defined satellite where their role can change. Research capacity, earlier we used to think that there is a finite bandwidth, finite potential of a space application, and today we talk about a network which can meet any demands of the user. So I'm going to address how to address this agility delta in my subsequent slides. Well, I need not to tell that when it comes to the capability, military operation needs mainly the persistent ISR, resilient PNT, secure high-band communication, and of course the rapid environment assessment. Today, the commercial world has come out with good solutions like proliferated Earth observations where thousands of satellites are there which can meet the requirement of the services. Today, the alternative of GNSS system is coming in the form of augmented services. Mega constellations are available to provide high bandwidth solutions to the users. And of course, the commercial hyperspectral and microsatellites can meet the demand of the services. So, the earlier, what used to think that a military payload, I am not going to cover about the space weaponization in this part. I'm only going to cover what are the technologies which can be addressed by the commercial world. So the past was we were having a specialized payload. They were isolated in nature, high cost payload. And today we talk about the constellations which can meet the requirement of the military, which have got tasking, which can be agile in nature. There is a distributed tendency to meet the failure in case any node fails, you can use the other node. And of course, you have got rapid deployment node to meet the service requirements if they are connected as part of the services. Today, world has told that there are constraints just to fight in the terrestrial domain unless space is effectively used to support the military operations. But the issue is that the requirement of the services is so high unless you go and adopt the ISR, PNT, SATCOM, and rapid response agility in the form of launch on demand, satellite refueling, satellite services from the commercial world. I'm afraid that we will not be able to support effectively in future the terrestrial domain operations of the military. Yes, the legacy architecture was the communication and GNSS. We were dependent in the geo. Today we find that this is very vulnerable. We were thinking the intelligence gathering in side lobes where there are services not fully integrated by sharing the intelligence data together, and we were taking years of launch. Tomorrow, the integrated resilient stack has to be established to connect the military by having low latency LEO communication to observe AI by the commercial world has come, which can churn the data on board and also on ground. There are augmented GNS systems which are going to come. The commercial world is able to support the SSA for having a shared situation awareness to protect our satellites, and the kind of constellation designs, innovative constellation designs which are coming, provide the sustainability of our assets in the orbit. So, I was talking, it was a 1 hour talk on the PNT and the synchronization requirement. To make that tomorrow, if we provide thousands of sensors to the military to fight a war, how we are going to task them? How we are going to synchronize? You know, when it comes to this type of a requirement today, if I know that a request to monitor a given area, if it is given, it takes 3 hours to meet the service requirement. Tomorrow, the war is not going to be fought with the operator in the loop. The operator may go out of the loop. And to meet those cognitive requirements of the services, they require tasking in seconds, milliseconds, or minutes. How it has to be done? Today, commercial world has found a solution of it. AI-driven tasking. Of course, when we talk PNT, it's a big area, but I want to tell you, not having a resilient PNT in the country not only gave problem to the services, but to the financial sector and also to the power grid, where the synchronization is required to be achieved in microsecond of the accuracy. So augmented PNT being provided by the services is going to be the need of the hour. I'm happy that today when I visit the foreign countries or in India, there are assets being put by the startups and the industry for space surveillance from the space itself, leading to a shared situation awareness about the space assets. There are telescopes, there are radars being put by the commercial world to give an effective input to the services, and this information can be used for collision avoidance and also threat and having a threat warning where an asset in the space is not treated as a dot but as a potential friendly asset or a threat. Well, if thousands of intelligence gathering satellites being put by the commercial world, why the military cannot utilize it to have a better situation awareness picture on the ground? Commercial world is moving fast. In future, refueling the satellites so that their lifetime can be extended. In fact, I'm not going to air-breathing electric propulsion system, which is a very specialized technology only for military. But the commercial world may not sustain it. But today, when the commercial world is talking about refueling of the satellites, the repair of the satellite, replacing the modules of the satellite to meet the agile requirement of the services, software programmable satellites, the same, the in-orbit service is going to be the order of the day in future. So, to enable resilient space defense, we require intelligence and connectivity by having broadband LEO communication, AI-driven tasking, and integrated data fusion. This will provide Also the resilient and operational ability with having geo-based PNT augmentation, space domain-based domain awareness, and also the tactically responsive space. Well, the operationalizing the commercial assets in the space requires the certification. And the certification is based on the operational requirements of the services. And the operational readiness levels I highlight in terms of the security, in terms of the time, and also in terms of the integration ability of the assets. We require the policy which US has got, and some things as my lab we started following with how to make this happen fast. But we are still away from the 12 months concept to orbit phase. We require future industry to embed in defense space operation centers without sacrificing the security of the nation to bring the shared situation awareness for the services in a contested environment of the space. Well, the certification of the commercial asset requires support from the services where their cyber vulnerability has to be checked. I just want to tell you why it is not possible to take the commercial asset and it becomes part of the military exercise so that it can be inducted fast. And then the operational requirements of the services can also be verified. So, to bridge the gap, we require industry licensing models, standardized data protocols to ingest the data from the commercial world, operational readiness levels, and we require rapid acquisition of prototyping by agile contracts. And we should focus at how can we meet the services requirement by using commercial access in 12 months of time. That should be our focus. Three important things when we are going to integrate these assets in the services: the security of the personnel, the data, everything is going to be important. But the other important issue is going to be the legal issues, because a commercial asset used for the military services will have its own implication like ITAR and all we need to address. Nothing can be done if we don't have the financial power to support the commercial world, and I'll be explaining it in the next. So you require the venture capital where the prototypes developed by the startups and the industry can see the light of the day, translating them into mega programs. We require infrastructure with public-private partnerships. We require strategic defense reserve. Very, very important that these constellations can be paid yearly basis, that if there is a situation to be exploited by the services, I have got the control over these assets, and 90% of the services belongs to me. And also the industries which are developing these constellations and the ISR and other payloads can be encouraged to have offset contracts to make India as a developed nation. So, we require integrated security, guardrails, financial, economic incentives, and something very important, the economic such readiness, where we can have the retaining fees of the fees where a service provider can charge in case I have to use its asset. Operational domain requires a continuous innovation ecosystem. I need not to highlight it. It starts with the academia, startup, followed by the niche technology like edge computing, quantum computing, and autonomy. We from my lab, from DRDO, we are encouraging academia to put hands into the niche R&D, and we have established an ecosystem to tie up the industry, startup, and also the academia. I want to tell you, last 6 months we could award 10 projects to the academia, amounting to 100 crore rupees. This will help to develop niche technology by academia, startups, and the industry to meet the services requirements. I want to tell you that as the world is changing, we have to focus on the small buses instead of using high radiation hardened parts. We can switch over to the quartz components, and also iteration of the requirements of the services can be addressed by having the programmable satellites. So, future, we may not have the tasking from the ground. Probably the commercial world can provide solution having a autonomous mesh of swarms. We need to address we have to overcome the valley of death problem. Everybody will work hard to provide a solution to the country, but finally we have to ensure that the business grows. It requires collaborated talent pipelines, various models to meet the service requirements. And this is the ODA in a different way. We require these thousands of sensors by the commercial world. I should be able to integrate them. I should be able to utilize them in the services, and I should be able to protect them. Here's an example. When today is one kinetic hit can create the entire failure, but tomorrow the network has to have an agility to overcome these type of issues. Well, this is an example of NATO, how they are managing already thousands of sensors, the constellations, getting the data which can be shared with the services, and also they have got the responsibility of protecting the assets. Well, the new front line to make commercial world as a force multiplier, we should be able to use the SARs, synthetic aperture radars, which are high in number, hyperspectrals, IR payloads. We have to follow what NATO style of working. We should be able to realize those payloads. And with the last two slides, the blueprint for India military space ecosystem, we have got DGDSA meeting the tri-service requirement of the users. We have to put private sector agility with us to meet the service requirements. We require a dedicated space doctrine to address that the procurement cycle can be reduced. The space to be used to have a regulatory body, and of course, ADP, IDEX, DRDO has got 3 different funding programs like DISUE, Aeronautical Research Development Board, and also the TDF scheme to meet the services requirements. Fueling the frontier, if we have to achieve 44 billion space economy by 2023, government is keen to have a funding of 1,000 crore rupees for the startup. We require a different culture where we have to develop space warrior officers, and also a mixture of civil and service personnel working together. So the responsibility of a scientist is to have industry-friendly payloads which can be directly translated by the industry. The innovator responsibility is to develop prototypes for niche technology development. The industry should have redundant supply chains, and the academia should refine their curriculum to meet the requirement of the country for having future space flights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that very insightful address. We now request Air Vice Marshal Manu Medha to kindly address the Cabinet.
Hello. Sorry.
General Bhatt, Chief Marshal Chaudhary, other distinguished members of the podium, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. Perhaps it is providential today that when we sit down to discuss how we move from being a nation that possesses space capabilities to a nation whose military operations are empowered by a robust indigenous space industry coincides very closely with the anniversary of Sindoor, a campaign which clearly demonstrated our capability to execute a network-centric, multi-domain operation supported by our space assets. The criticality of space for warfighting was acknowledged way back in 1991. The first Gulf War was typically called as the first space war. However, it is instructive for us to note that the ongoing US-Iran war, and I'm discounting the fragile ceasefire that is holding for now, is being called as the first commercial space war, which underscores the importance of the nation's comprehensive space capability towards warfighting. It is not just the deployed military forces or the defense space assets that will determine how we execute our wars in future, but it will be the sum total of our combined capabilities that we are able to bring to the battlefield. As we stand here in 2026, the global security architecture has undergone a tectonic shift. The established rules, norms, and behaviors that could be taken for granted till a few months back no longer hold the same sanctity. Today, in a world where the actions of some of the powers seem to be guided more by self-interest than treaty obligations, it is absolutely imperative that we have sovereign capability in all spheres, but most importantly, in emerging domains and niche technologies. Our forefathers had the vision and the foresight to anticipate the technological and military landscape of today and laid down the basic foundations for us to develop the space capabilities. We owe our success today to their vision, perseverance, and capability. For decades, India's space story has been one of capability demonstration, proving we could launch heavy payloads, reach the moon, reach the Mars. Those milestones were important. However, if we have to stand our ground in the world where the governments are launching mega constellations and private companies are planning to deploy 1 million data centers in space, we need to move away from this mindset. Technology and military doctrine have had a very intricate relationship. While a few years back, military doctrine drove the advancement in technology, today we have rapid advancement in technology which is driving the way we fight. In fact, technologies are getting obsolete before they are getting absorbed. However, I do feel the challenge for India is not technology. It's the capability for mass production. Having said that, I would like to say that today, at this moment in history, we are at a very sweet spot to define the future of our space trajectory. We have a large and talented population, an entrepreneurial young working class, and an astute leadership, political, scientific, and military, which understands and supports the requirement. A nation's defense capability is a microcosm of the national capability. Similarly, the national defense space capability is a microcosm of national space capability, of which academia and industry are an absolute, integral, and critical part. The academia, industry, and defense forces bring their own unique capabilities to the table. The industry is uniquely capable to be agile with a faster decision-making processes and bring operational muscle for rapid production capability. Perhaps today, any one Indian space industry may not have the capability to undertake large projects on its own, but I'm aware there's enough capability in the environment to aim big with collaboration to harness each other's complementary capabilities. At the same time, a strong space industry requires a skilled workforce, institutions of higher learning, and research organizations to support our dream. We must also have the entrepreneurial mindset and risk-taking ability to venture where no human has gone before. Arjun did not wait for the perfect boat to be crafted. He trained relentlessly, adapted to what he had, and mastered his domain completely. We need to adopt the same philosophy: continuous readiness, constant adaptation, and unwavering commitment to the mission. I do realize that there are certain asks from the industry to realize their full potential. What I would like to assure the industry that our doors are always open for finding the best way forward. In fact, we have the full confidence and looking forward to industry to take the lead and suggest solutions. The mere fact that more than half of the satellites in SBS-3 are being sourced from private industry less than 3 years after promulgation of the policy is testament to the intent, confidence, and resolve of the industry for participation of the private industry to strengthen Indian defense space capability. From our side, we are committed to empower the industry in whatever manner we can. We would like to tell the audience that we may not be the masters in rocket science, but we are the masters in the art of the possible. Difficult, we do immediately. Impossible may take a little time. As we look into the future, it is absolutely clear that the future of national security belongs to the nation that can sense faster, decide faster, and act faster. Our strength in space will not be measured by the number of satellites we launch. It will be measured by the security we deliver to every citizen and the deterrence we project to our adversary. And for that, empowering the space industry is not merely an economic and technological objective. It is a strategic imperative for us. For a nation like India, with our unique security challenges and aspirations, the integration of space capability is essential. We need to aim to build a robust and dynamic ecosystem, one that drives innovation and growth and at the same time safeguards our national security. We have the talent, we have the technology, and we have the resolve. What remains is our collective commitment to innovate boldly, invest wisely, collaborate openly, and operationalize the space capability at a scale worthy of a nation determined to secure its destiny. I compliment ISPA for having structured the conclave to deliberate on all relevant aspects to develop our national defense space capability. I am sure between yesterday and today's discussion that the very capable panelists will provide meaningful outcomes for a journey towards that goal. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for that very powerful address. May I request Vice Admiral Sanjay Jasjeet Singh, DG USI, to kindly deliver the keynote address.
Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, Director General ISPA, Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary, former Chief of Air Staff, distinguished panelists, officers, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed my privilege to be present here today. So very frankly, after listening to the comprehensive talks of the Director Space Projects and the DG, Defense Space Agency, I'm not sure what I can add. But I'll try and give a few generic nuggets since I've been given 9.5 minutes that's left and fill up the time. And I'll start by saying and reiterating that India today is amongst the leading nations in launching and exploiting satellites in the space sector. We have satellites covering the entire range from communications to imagery to position, navigation and timing. And our space program has emerged as a global leader. In fact, apart from the recent indigenous milestones, it is a matter of pride for all of us that the path ahead is highlighted by the recent joint NASA, ISRO and NISAR mission, where we successfully saw Group Captain Sudhanshu Shukla going into space, closely accompanied and supported by Group Captain Papa Nair with all his engines revved up and waiting for the next catapult, which I'm sure will follow soon. A key characteristic of all spacecraft, and as Group Captain Shukla pointed out when he was looking at it, the wider view. And that wider view includes the wider aspect of national security, which goes beyond defense. We are looking at the ability to observe the land and maritime spaces worldwide, which is pivotal in building up and understanding the overall domain awareness. Domain awareness is simply looking at, discerning, and crystallizing what is happening all around us. India is aiming to launch 50 satellites in the next 5 years, primarily for geointelligence gathering, because that's an area, as we've noticed from recent conflicts, that we really need to accelerate on. And this will include a layer of satellites in different orbits, with a capacity to track not just airfields, but seaports and wide areas across land and maritime spaces. We are looking at imaging not just spots, but thousands of kilometers, including at sea, with the areas of interest required to be imaged every day in multiple cycles. That's the only way we'll get adequate domain awareness. It's a combination of the GEO, that is the geostationary equatorial orbit, and the low Earth orbit, as well as very low Earth orbit satellites will be required for a proper and timely assessment of the evolving situation. While geostationary satellites at 36,000 kilometers will provide us a broad picture, but we need greater resolution, which can be provided by complementing it by low Earth orbit and very low Earth orbit satellites working in a complementary manner. We also have multiple modes. It's not just the optical mode on which we rely, but also synthetic aperture radar, hyperspectral imaging, electromagnetic, and combined technologies, including thermal. This is a capability that is waiting to be exploited with tremendous magnitude, and which we need to deploy in a layered, as I mentioned, and complementary manner, which needs to be developed as of yesterday. We not only need to build the situation awareness, but also the ability to exploit the satellites to detect changes in the environment around us in real time or near real time, reduce the data download time, integrate AI-related data analysis, and to disseminate the necessary information to commanders in the field. While India is pushing for indigenous space technologies under the mantra of reform, perform, and transform, 3 pillars of our space vision will need focused attention in the years ahead. The first will be using space technology for societal development. Most defense technologies in the Western world have emanated from pure defense R&D, which have then translated to the civil world. For India, it's been the other way around. We have focused on civil R&D and then adapted it to work for defense purposes because we found that as being larger, more cost-effective for overall society. So whatever defense space vision we look at ahead, we have to remember it needs to be dual use. We need to be able to, for cost-benefit analysis and economies of scale, be able to apply it in the civil sector primarily, as well as adapt it to the larger concept of national security, which includes food, health, water security, as well as defense. And in this, we've made some strong processes, but most important is not just the ability to build satellites, but also to launch them. And it's heartening to hear Dr. Anupam Sharma say how we're going to move from 6 to 7 launches per year to double that figure in the next few years. The focus ahead will need to be of harnessing all aspects of national security, linking it back through a network of networks, and be able to discern and derive aspects that are affecting defense. The second horizon I will speak about is advancing space science and technology. For the same reason, we need to focus on civil as well as defense at the same time, otherwise the defense will not be affordable. And we'll have too little of it and not enough for it to be effective. So we need to undertake a human mission to moon, and I can see Groupie Papa Nair smiling already. Yeah, but it's going to be probably another 10 years down. You probably know better, Groupie. Establishing India's own space station and explore deep space with missions to other planets such as Venus. I understand ISRO has already carried out missions towards this, and they've got an advanced astrosat way back in 2015 and solar mission Aditya L1 just a couple of years ago. And we achieved a major milestone by becoming the first nation to launch a robotic spacecraft near the moon's south pole. ISRO is also pursuing India's first crewed mission into space, and I'm sure when Groupie Papa Nair and Groupie Shubhanshu Shikla speak to us, they'll cover some of this aspect because I understand the target is next year. India is expected to expand on such initiatives in the coming years. And defense forces, and especially the Air Force, will be in the lead in all such initiatives. However, achieving all this will not be possible with just in-house efforts of government agencies like ISRO or the Air Force or the Navy. Remember, no matter how high you go, when you come back, it's got to be out at sea. And the recently established Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center, that is in space, the commercial arm of ISRO. So hence the third horizon that I'm going to talk about is fostering a vibrant commercial space ecosystem. Approximately 400 startups are already active in the space sector, and it is entirely possible that at least 5 of this will become unicorns in the next 5 years, and we all look forward to that. Private startups like the New Space India Limited, Agnikul Cosmos, which became the first company to successfully test a fully 3D printed rocket engine to carry payloads up to 100 kgs into low Earth orbit, and Messrs. Skyroot Aerospace, a private company in Hyderabad building small satellite launch vehicles, exemplify the capabilities of Indian industry amongst many others. ISRO is also transferring launch technology to the private sector and enabling future launch vehicles, satellite launches via PSLV and the SSLV. Increasingly, India is turning to private investment to establish itself as a global leader in space technology. Around 140 satellites are expected to be launched under the public-private partnership model, and the government has recently announced an $11 billion research, development and innovation scheme to boost private sector advances in deep tech sectors through concessional financing. It will finance projects that are so-called technology readiness level of 4 or above, which means the project is getting closer to going to market. Since opening up to the private sector, India's space economy has steadily grown to about $8 billion. And with an ambitious pace of growth, we may reach $44 billion, as Dr. Anupam Sharma pointed out, in the next decade. And a large percentage of this will be achieved by India's space startups, which are already involved in satellite manufacturing, space launch services, and space-based data analytics. It will be evident that India is accelerating its space ambitions as part of a broader plan to become a developed country by 2047. At the same time, it is important and sobering to remember that space agendas are inherently ambitious. After all, we are in more ways than one reaching for the stars. And hence our space programs, which are often driven by necessity, tech research and advancement, underpinned by national aspiration and commercial interests, can face challenges at times, and we have to be prepared for that. Hence, we must take into account the possibility of project delays, mission failures, unforeseen engineering challenges, budgetary limitations, and disproportionate denial regimes at times. Cater for those